Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. I'm sure more people will filter in, so I'm going to share a couple quick links that I'll drop in the chat a couple times for people who are joining a little bit later. I'm joined with Reclaim co-founder Patrick Lightbody. My name's Elizabeth. We'll be hosting today's session. As I've already mentioned, for everyone who's been here a couple minutes, we do have the Q&A open. We have the webinar chat open. Feel free to drop in questions, comments, thoughts in either of those spots. We are going to be taking a look at the next generation of Reclaim. A lot of folks who are joining, if you signed up around mid-May, might already be on the new platform. A lot of you might already be older users who are still on the 1.0 platform, so we'll see some things that are different. Yeah, we're going to be doing a demo, answering any questions that you have, and helping anyone who wants to move over and get started on 2.0 do so. Patrick, I'm going to hand it over to you. Like I said, I'm going to drop some quick links in the chat as well for overview docs, our support contact if you wanted to reach out there to get moved over if you are on the 1.0 platform, and how to figure out which platform you're on if you're not sure. And we've got someone from Germany, my home country. All right, perfect. Patrick, I'm going to hand it over to you and we can get started.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We got a lot of great attendance today, and I know there's a ton of pent-up demand for Reclaim 2.0 product. I mean, being very straight, like we've been a little quiet in terms of public-facing launches for the last 6 months. And I know we've heard in the community, people are like, what's Reclaim up to? I promise you, we've been very hard at work, and I'm really excited to show you what's here. We've previewed some of this stuff in some other sessions, but that was all pre-launch. And as of, I believe, May 26, we started rolling it out to new customers. And I'm, also being straight with you as a founder, I always want to be like very candid. I know some of you are existing customers. A lot of you have probably been on the wait list, and you might be like, hey, that's frustrating. I've been on the wait list. How come I didn't get the first invite? And frankly, I really would like for you to be one of the earliest users, and you still can. But migrating users over is always like trickier than starting fresh. And so we're always kind of juggling. We're like, well, how do we get feedback at scale from customers about what we have built? And then also, how do we make sure that we can bring everyone along the journey and that we don't break workflows at least too much, or we improve them in a number of ways? And I'm also going to say there are going to be some of you who are going to see Reclaim 2.0, and you might say, that's not how I work. I'm not ready to jump into it. Or maybe you're ready to jump into it and you're willing to like work with us and give us feedback. I'll walk you through kind of what's improved, what's different. I wouldn't say anything's highly negative, but people get in a certain workflow, and in particular around tasks and smart meetings. If those are features you heavily use, pay close attention, because you're going to see some pretty different behaviors, and you might love them, or you might say, not yet for me, and I want to share with you all kind of what I would need to see to get to 2.0. Okay, with that disclaimer out of the way, I want to tell you a little bit about what led us to this product and what we've been doing for the last 7 years to get here. So Henry, my co-founder, and I started Reclaim largely because we were very busy product managers, product leaders at a mid-size SaaS, publicly traded SaaS software company. And what we found was that teams in a corporate environment tended to work best. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that influences whether a team's effective or ineffective. But one of the things we found is that the leaders of those teams, think like managers, program managers, engineering managers, directors of product, those kind of people, were most effective when they were really in control of their time, not surprisingly. And that's why you see a lot of self-help books and productivity books that focus on time and focus on calendaring and focus on intentionality, reflection of where you spend your time. And so we decided, you know what, let's focus on that problem. And so Reclaim was born. And as we built it out, we had a strong opinion that automation was important, that we needed to not just tell you had a problem. If you were coming to us, you probably knew you had a problem with how you were managing your time, and that you were looking for solutions. And we felt like the solution couldn't be just, oh, here's some analytics, here's some statistics, here's, generic guidance. It needed to be action. And so we built Reclaim from the day we launched it publicly in 2020, which was an interesting year for everybody, that we needed to do things to make your life simpler and better and more effective. And so features like habits, and smart meetings and calendar sync and tasks, they were all born kind of in that year, 2020, 2021. And we had this strong opinion that when it comes to scheduling, people wanted predictability. And I think that's still absolutely true. And so as large language models came onto the scene, say like 2023, 2024, we kept taking a look and we're like, well, how can we incorporate LLM technology into the scheduler? And what we found is it was very difficult in the way we had designed Reclaim originally to do that, because Reclaim was always built with this idea of like instantly responding to your calendar changes and moving things around on your Google Calendar and then later your Outlook calendar in a deterministic way. And so most of you, I think almost all of you, have been experiencing Reclaim in that way. And we tried a few prototypes over the years of bringing in, Anthropic or Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT models, and we found the results were subpar. And so mid last year, almost a year ago, we concluded that we needed to kind of build something up from the start with a mindset of taking the best things we could bring over for Reclaim 1.0 and also bringing over a new way of thinking about it that augmented and worked with chat-based systems. And that does include, I saw we already had one question about this, that includes a chat built into Reclaim and also rich integration into third-party chat systems like Claude and ChatGPT. In specifically to answer that question, we are waiting. The rumor is out there that Google is going to launch a dedicated desktop application that can do MCP. Right now, Gemini is predominantly kind of vertically integrated into Google Workspace apps in various places. When Google launches an app that is like a dedicated Gemini app, and I expect it's imminent, we will definitely support it. And you'll see here in a moment how we will approach that. Okay, so with that all out of the way, I will continue to keep looking at the Q&A. And Elizabeth, if I don't respond to one, you can also keep me honest. And I'm going to start sharing and show you all the latest and greatest of Reclaim 2.0. This is available to anybody who is interested in it on this call today. I would just ask that you go ahead and open a support case and say, I'm interested in upgrading to 2.0. Our team can flip a flag and it will allow you to self-service upgrade into this platform. But I would encourage you to check out the whole thing before you jump right into it, because there's a lot to learn, and including a few things that are a little different with smart meetings and tasks. Okay, so right off the bat, you might notice it's I think a much more streamlined interface. We got rid of the navigation on the left-hand side, and we leaned into an interface that is predominantly, of course, your calendar and this assistant UI on the right-hand side. To give you a sense of where we are going, this is not available today, but you can imagine the right-hand side also will soon be available as a Chrome extension. In fact, I have a preview here. I'm just not going to go through that too much right now, but the idea being that the right-hand side could actually come with you and be available in a companion app if you're natively in Google Calendar or Microsoft Outlook, or wherever you might be. You might be in Jira or any other productivity tool. And that might also be a good place to engage with some of the things you're about to see. Okay, so the next thing to know is I'm going to assume most of you are existing Reclaim users on the 1.0 product. And you might be wondering, where the heck did habits and tasks and buffers and all those things go? So I'll first just orient yourself a little bit. Scheduling is the actual scheduling links feature. This is probably in the next maybe week or two going to evolve a little bit further into something we're just calling meetings. And meetings will give you a holistic view of all the meetings that you've got going on, including recurring meetings that might be internal, an easy way to convert them to smart meetings, and also a view of external meetings, customer calls, partner calls, things like that. And of course, the entry into our scheduling links feature. Insights is the stats capability that we've offered for a long time. I won't be demoing this today because it's not the main thrust of Reclaim 2.0, but we've done a lot of work on the performance of the stats. And if you're in an enterprise organization, the ability to do company-wide analytics filtered by department, role, geography. We've got a lot of our enterprise customers pulling us in that direction. So if that's interesting to you, please reach out to us and we can give you a separate demo on all of those analytics. Okay, back over here. This is the main place you'll spend most of your time in Reclaim. And things like habits and buffer time and focus time and smart meetings, you will see are now framed as agents. And we call them agents, partly because everything's agentic these days, but really, truly, not just to be a little like, writing the buzzword bandwidth. Even before LLMs and even before ChatGPT, our features like habits really felt like an agent working on your behalf. It was doing things like blocking out time for you to get lunch. And so you can see here, I'm going ahead and adding a lunch break. Now, what's really interesting, I hope that you'll like, is the way we've leaned into the performance, just how fast everything is responding to your scheduling changes, and this idea of a preview mode. So you notice when I went and added my first agent, it put me in this preview mode. And what preview mode is doing, and this becomes much more apparent in a moment when I lean into the chat, is it's giving you the ability to see how your agent is configured and how it would respond before it's actually set loose on your calendar. So I can actually toggle off preview mode and you can see both the calendar changes go away. So this is what my actual live calendar looks like. And even my settings on the right-hand side, it says no scheduled agents yet. But when I turn it back on, you can see, okay, there's a medium priority lunch agent that's been configured. And I can go in and I can refine it a little bit further. I might say, you know what, actually, the ideal time, let me go back to this week. The ideal time for my lunch is typically 11:30. I like to eat a little bit early. I get up early. And so you can see these changes move in real time. You can go week to week and you can see how it adapts. I can go and you can see in this case, it still pushed it back to 1:00 because it recognized that I've got a meeting at 12 and it tried to give me the full hour instead of a 30 minutes. I can edit a lot of the rules. These are things that you might be familiar with already from the habits feature. They still exist. And there's a lot more that I'll cover here in a moment. But this gives me a chance to build up confidence in what the product is doing before setting it loose on my calendar. When I'm happy with those results, I can click review and apply. But the other thing I want to highlight is that this preview isn't just for the agents, it's for anything on your calendar. So for example, I can put an event on my calendar like that. And that's also getting staged up in the preview mode. So not only am I now, of course, seeing how the lunch habit evolves, but I'm also queuing up a busy event that isn't yet on my calendar. I'm going to go ahead and apply both of those things. So just a side note, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on preview as its own dedicated feature, but it is a first of its kind. If you're into calendaring and you're into lots of scheduling, it is the only product in the whole market that lets you do bulk editing. And so if you're someone who's like trying to move a lot of meetings, kind of play that calendar Tetris game, and sometimes you're moving it again and emails are flying out and people are confused, you can actually just use just our calendar and queue up a bunch of changes and then set them all loose at once. We didn't build it for that reason, but it's a really nice byproduct. We built it specifically to solve that problem I mentioned at the start, which is how do we make Reclaim be both predictable, but also lean into LLM technology, which is naturally somewhat unpredictable. It is truly, non-deterministic. Okay, so that is the opening remarks of like how the kind of core foundational system works. I know we got a lot of questions that just came in. Elizabeth, any that I should jump on right away? I'm just scanning through here. I will get to all of them, I promise. I don't think there's any just yet. I'll come back to a bunch of them. So I just want to make sure there weren't any that were like highly relevant to what I just was showing off. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the chat. So what is great about the chat system, I'm going to start with just basic chat stuff, is it is able to work, and in fact, it's designed to work in the preview mode. In fact, in our chat, it can only do things in the preview mode, meaning you have no risk of it potentially destroying your calendar, for example. So, just to really drive that point home, if I said something highly destructive, delete all calendar events on my calendar the week of June 15th, it might, by the way, that's a pretty destructive thing. So it might still ask me to confirm, but usually we've biased it towards action because it is aware that it operates in a sandbox. Yeah, go for it. And so what you're going to see is this really neat experience where you can participate in a chat but also visually see what it's doing and what it's working through. And you notice it said, I'll stage the deletions. And so see how it's pulling things off the calendar, but it's not actually making these changes live. It is up to you to decide how you're going to, how or if you're going to apply them, or even discard some of them if you want. And so you get this really nice interface that makes it easy and safe to work with a large language model. And I want to be clear, I'll come back to this a little more deeply. All of this is also available in third-party chat tools. So we have a really nice ChatGPT integration. You can find Reclaim today in the ChatGPT App Store. Here's an example of me saying, hey, find some time with two of my coworkers. There are a lot of tools that are available, including organizational chart, directory, top contacts. So you can see here it knew immediately who I meant by Nick. It wasn't 100% sure which Elizabeth to connect with. And you can see it then found some time that's available. And what's cool is these are interactive widgets. So I don't know if you've ever experienced this in ChatGPT, but we invested in some rich interactive components where you can actually click on them and not just do the interface through chat. And to really show this off, here's Claude. So I just showed you ChatGPT. I can ask simple questions like what's on the schedule. You can see I've got a whole thing here. I can click into them. I can change my RSVP. I can find other times. I can delete the event. I can even get a full screen view. And there's nothing like this out there in the market. So if you're a Claude zealot or a ChatGPT zealot and you're always spending your time in there, you should have confidence knowing that Reclaim can meet you where you're working and give you access to all these same tools. And what's cool is you can actually split screen it. So when you go in and, for example, actually, I need to reset this because I just deleted all these things. So give me a moment. And let's just go ahead and say, you know what? I am not going to do the Everett pickup next week. You will see that in a moment, that should come through on the preview mode here. There it goes. And so that change that I did in Claude can also visually be previewed right here as well. So sometimes we've seen some of our early customers keeping both screens side by side. You can also apply these changes right from ChatGPT and Claude. You have to click through to apply them in our interface because we can give you that interface. But in these interfaces, and this includes Claude Code, we knew that people would want to be able to queue up changes and then send them off. And so we've given you that ability. I would strongly encourage you to configure your Claude to ask you for approval before running the apply command, the apply tool, so that you're still fully in control of the LLM. Okay, let me discard these changes right now. So the next thing I want to highlight is some of the other agents that we have available here. And I know one of the very first questions we had was about buffer times and travel times. Jen asked this. Question was, I love the travel buffer concept, and I really need it. However, sometimes I need it for my calendar, and other times I don't. Will there be an easy way to toggle on or off for specific events? Jen, I'm going to show you some more advanced features of our buffer capability that are new to 2.0. I think they will partly address some of what you're looking for, but there may be some more things we can do to make it even easier for you to use. But let's dive in. So I showed you habits. We scheduled a lunch habit. Let's go look at buffers. So we have our classic buffers that we've been doing for a long time. Decompress after meetings, get you time for travel before or after a meeting. If it's an event that clearly is like a flight, then get you extra time before and after. But we also added one that people have asked for a long time, like meeting prep. So I'm going to show that one first just because it's new, but it's also going to highlight some of the capabilities that you can go deeper on around customization. So here you can see, if I click into edit the rules, large meetings I've organized. So here, that's one of the rules. It's showing me a really nice matcher interface. But I could say, you know what, actually, I don't want to do that. I want to, oops, sorry, I just want to remove that filter. Instead, I don't want it about large meetings that I'm the organizer of. How about instead, it's just anything that contains the word GTM? And you can see it still matches the same events, but there's a really sophisticated set of rules that you can configure to do both pre and post buffers. So one thing I'd recommend, Jen, is you could start to have some conventions. Like if the word FYI is in there, I can tell you my wife and I invite each other to meetings. Typically, if we're volunteering at one place, she might want me to know that she's volunteering and won't be around during that time. And so she'll invite me to it, but it's not a meeting I'm actually going to. And so I don't need to know to be reminded to RSVP to it, which I'll get to in a second. We have these meeting quality agents as well that can do things like remind you to RSVP to things. I don't need to know about that necessarily. And so I could go in and I can say my convention with my family is that the word FYI means don't consider that. So we've given you a bunch of capabilities and there's all sorts of fields, as you can see here. We have some nice presets as well for common types of matching rules to configure your buffers and the RSVP settings and video link settings. I think those are the first ones we've been doing. We anticipate adding this to habits and other agents as well soon. So Jen, I would just say, if you have certain conventions, you can configure agents in different ways to add more or less travel time. Perhaps you travel to a couple different cities or addresses. That's an easy way to, without us. I know some people want us to offer a feature that actively looks for traffic time, and that's something we're considering. But this is another way you could get around that. You could say, okay, when I need to travel to that remote location, then make the travel time longer. And when it's a different location, I can make it a little less. So these are nice new capabilities that did not exist. You can also narrow it to specific calendars. So maybe you only want to do it for your work calendar, not your personal calendar, and so on and so forth. And as you can see here, you can define buffers that also are before and or after. You can do either one of those things. All right, so that is the travel buffer capability, and you can do a lot of things with this because of the customizations that came with it. The next one I want to highlight is focus time. Actually, Elizabeth, were there any other buffer-related questions that came up before I move on?
No, I think you answered them. Jessica did ask, will the task, habit, and calendar event features be usable outside the chat box in 2.0? And I think just calling this out too would be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I want to highlight, I'll just briefly mention this. Hold on, how do I get this little Zoom thing to move? If I go into settings here and you look at this app, there are a lot of tools that we made available to ChatGPT and Claude. And as you can see here, there are lots of task-related tools as well. So our intent, I can't say we exactly 100% of every feature you can do in the Reclaim chat will show up in Claude and ChatGPT. But our intent is to get as close as possible to that. The few times we're not doing it is typically where it can create a little confusion over who's responsible for providing that integration. I know I saw a question here around, can we still automatically connect to Todoist? The answer is yes, and I'm going to demo that in just one moment when I dive into the task feature. But also we know that Claude, ChatGPT, other LLMs, there are MCPs provided by Todoist and Jira and Asana and ClickUp and others who can connect directly to those chats. So something we're working through is how does the workflow work if, say, you've connected ChatGPT to Todoist and you've also connected Reclaim to Todoist? Who's responsible for surfacing up the next task to work on? Just being straight with you, we're still working through that. If that describes you, if you're someone who you can imagine like, oh yeah, that might be me, reach out to us in support. Let us know. We want to iterate on the tools so they work really well in all the common use cases. Okay. Coming back to the other agents, the next one I want to highlight just briefly is the focus agents. So if you were using our focus time feature, this should look very familiar. We have two flavors of it. One is the one that just blocks out a maximum amount of time. So here you can see it's pre-configured to 10 hours. in 30-minute to 8-hour intervals. If I were to raise this up to 16 hours, you'll see how it kind of grows. And again, the preview mode is really nice for being able to see this before you set it loose. You can also now, this is new that we didn't have all these capabilities. You can configure all sorts of things about the focus time event that we're actually putting on the calendar. If you're on Google, we will schedule these as true focus time events. We will lean into auto decline. If it's a native focus time event, you'll see that in the focus time event. And if it's not a native focus event, then we'll just do the declining for you. So I don't want to dive too deep into this. It's a pretty basic feature. There's a few other settings I won't go into too much, but this one I would say is about being proactive, like just blocking out the time no matter what. And for some people, that's exactly what they want. But for others, especially those who have a lot of meetings and need to be available for external meetings through our scheduling links or internal meetings to coworkers, having big old focus time blocks could actually be counterproductive. And over time, people start to ignore them. And so something you probably have seen with our, let's see, what happened to my lunch? I think I deleted that. Sorry about that. I deleted the recurring event that was underneath it. But something you may have seen and some of you have experienced with our product is we've always been really thoughtful around how to treat free and busy time on the calendar. So what you can see here is these lunch events are actually being scheduled as free time. And that means a scheduling link or internal meeting that someone's trying to find time to meet with me will not see it, and they'll be able to book time. And we'll keep doing that until you get extra busy. And so, for example, if I go into preview mode to really showcase this, notice how it now filled in. Unlike, and I'll just apply this so we can see it live. Unlike the other, let's get those, give it a second for those habits to come back. Unlike the other ones that were marked as free time, the lunch event is getting marked as busy because it knew that it was like my last 30 minutes of that day because of that busy block. We may have a little bug going on. This is a bummer, Elizabeth. And so we'll see what's going on. But I think there's something with the habits feature. So we'll get that squared away real soon. Next up, I want to show you the other type of focus mode. And this one is more about responding to when you're getting overloaded with too many meetings. And so what this one does is it doesn't put anything on the calendar. It's really leaning into this philosophy at Reclaim that you might want your calendar to remain available until you're running out of time, and then it should be getting marked as busy. And so, for example, I'll get rid of the weekly just because it's an extra variable for us to think about. This is saying when I've got 4 hours or more meetings, then block out the day. I don't have 4 hours of meetings on any day next week, so I'm just going to drop this down so we can really see it in action. I think it might kick in. There it goes. So Wednesday had at least 2 or more hours of meetings. You can see there's this coffee meeting, there's this meeting, and this meeting. So I had 2.5 hours. And so this is a good example of how it kicks in only when you're getting overloaded with too many meetings. So if you're looking for, here you can see I move it back up to 2.5 and now it's not kicking in. But if I took in one more meeting, then it would kick in. So we recommend this one if you're trying to just protect yourself from getting overloaded. And that's the focus event. Okay, now let's start talking about smart meetings. And smart meetings changed a lot. I mentioned that at the outset. And so if you're using smart meetings today, I want you to pay close attention to this one. Actually, before I continue, Elizabeth, any questions that came up about focus before I keep moving?
I have not seen any focus questions.
Okay.
But if you do have them, drop them in there. We'll loop back to them.
Great. I did see someone said, can we add a travel buffer after a meeting? Absolutely. That feature has existed in Reclaim 1.0 and that still exists in Reclaim 2.0. Just to very briefly demonstrate it, here's travel time before and after events. And you can see it's putting my child Maggie does fencing, true story, and I will take her to and from fencing. If you wanted to further customize it, so not just events with a location, that's how we come back into here. So, all right. So let's get back now.
Oh. Quickly, Patrick, I do see a focus time question here. Someone asked, how does focus time work? I tried scheduling multiple tasks and Google Tasks into a focus time block. It scheduled only one task after the focus time block, not in it.
Gotcha. And I would love a follow up if this is someone who's currently using Reclaim 2.0 or someone who is using Reclaim 1.0. But I think it gets to the heart of our task feature and the intersection. Okay, using 2.0. So let's give me a moment, and we will, when I get to the task feature, and we'll talk about that. I suspect I know what was going on there, but our philosophy is to suggest tasks when you're in focus time, and I'll show that to people in a moment. In fact, I'm gonna plant a little seed here. Let's see. It is. Bear with me. This may not make sense to folks, but it'll make sense in a second. I'm going to put a block of time on the calendar, and I'm going to set it for I don't know, less than 3 minutes from now, and we will see something happen in a moment. All right. So while we're waiting for a few minutes for that to kick in, I want to highlight smart meetings. So the way smart meetings worked in Reclaim 1.0 is we would try to find time for all the required attendees to attend. And if any of them were unavailable, we'd then try to immediately find a new time for them to meet. Just being straight with you, the feature worked great for like 95% of our customers and was very frustrating for about 5% of users, and maybe even more than 5%. But when it was very frustrating, it was incredibly frustrating. And what we learned, and part of why it took us so long to get Outlook support out last year, was in particular, Outlook makes this thing extra complicated. Because if any of you are on Outlook and have also used Google Calendar, Google Calendar lets you suppress the email notification when you make a change to an event. And so Reclaim can kind of just keep operating and optimizing behind the scenes. Outlook does not let you do that. And the way we had built smart meetings was always trying to move things around. And in some cases, it could create like a storm of emails. And so it was one of our first realizations. We really needed a stronger human in the loop workflow. And so we took a whole fresh look at smart meetings, and we concluded that although some people really loved the auto movement, and I do think we will get some of that back in the Reclaim 2.0 product, what people really wanted more than that was confidence in what was going to change for meetings in particular, and an approval workflow before they did that. So I want to go ahead and show you an example of what it means to add a smart meeting. So I just made this go-to-market stand up a smart meeting. I want to highlight the fact that our smart meetings feature was almost, I want to say 99.9% of them were only used for one-on-ones. But this one is being used for multi-person meetings. It works way better for group meetings. And so I'm going to go ahead and set it off and apply this. And one of the things you can see right off the bat is that tomorrow I have a conflict. I cannot make the meeting because I have a customer meeting at the same time. And we highlight it visually right here in the calendar UI and make it easy for you to find different times to go ahead and move it. That's one way you can use smart meetings, but it's not the only way. That's a more classic calendaring view. Where it gets more interesting is we will email you and Slack message you if you have our Slack integration on every morning, usually about an hour before your working hours. And we do know some people would like this to be an evening routine, not a morning routine. So we're going to add that capability as well. We'll email you a digest that highlights all the issues with your calendar, and more importantly, highlights ways to fix that and makes it easy to fix it. So what do I mean by issues? Well, notice there's a section here called issues, and it's highlighting several things. It's highlighting this conflict. It's highlighting that I don't have an agenda. This is something, the new Reclaim platform also supports this concept of enterprise or team-wide meeting quality agents. And so one of the things at Dropbox we're trying to do is encourage our coworkers to not send meeting invites out without agendas. And so we highlight those as problems as well. And here you can see we're also highlighting things where you forgot to add a video link for something that obviously needs one. Where are all those coming from? These are called meeting quality agents. I'm going to get back to smart meetings in a second, but it's all related to this concept of issues. And you can see them over here. We pre-install a bunch of these automatically for you. And if you work with us for enterprise, you can actually get custom ones like the Dropbox meeting agendas that can be available just for your organization that can follow really sophisticated rules. But issues are an easy place to quickly work through your calendar in a more classic calendaring workflow. Where it gets really interesting, though, is when we do that daily digest. What we're doing every morning is we're effectively asking the AI system to go look at those issues and propose fixes to resolve them. And so what you'll see here is we are doing things like automatically adding a Zoom meeting to that meeting that doesn't have it and helping you get ahead of it. We should, in a moment here, also see that conflict. There you go. That conflict is getting rescheduled to a time that works for everybody. And we're presenting them as proposals that you can easily say, I want to keep them or I don't. So for example, maybe I'm going to say, you know what, thanks, Reclaim, but actually the go-to-market stand-up, I'm okay missing. The rest of the team will do their stand-up and I'm just going to go to the customer call. So you can discard them and be in the loop still and be in control. You can even tell it to always ignore that. We have a whole concept of memories as well that I want to highlight. So you can tell the chat and say, don't worry about these kinds of conflicts, or I want you to make decisions in this direction. But ultimately, you're always in control before you go ahead and apply the changes. And you'll get a digest every morning that helps you resolve these kinds of problems. And so what Smart Meetings is all about is just elevating that meeting up a little bit higher to not just a generic conflict, but specifically telling the AI assistant that you are comfortable moving that meeting around more aggressively than it just being a generic problem. So we're pretty excited about this. We know it's a little different than the Smart Meeting feature that people had been using previously, but we think there's a lot of power and it also gives you a lot more confidence in how this stuff works. I think that's all I'm going to say on Smart Meetings, unless there are further questions on that one, Elizabeth.
I don't see any Smart Meetings questions. We do have a question from Grace. Can we set max meetings per day or week for custom days or weeks instead of constantly manually adjusting?
Yeah, max meetings. There's a couple things. One, if you're dealing with our scheduling links feature, every link itself, if the question is how do I not get overloaded by too many people using my a particular meeting link, we do support that today. You can see, let's see if I can remember where the heck it is in their settings here. I probably just scrolled by it. Elizabeth, you got to keep me honest. Where am I missing it?
Frequency limit.
Thank you. I'm just blind. So we have that capability for scheduling links. But I'd say if you're more concerned just about total meeting overload, what I would encourage you to do is to lean into that focus agent. Focus right here, defend meeting overload. This is where, as I showed earlier, you would probably just broadly for any meeting, internal, external, whether it's booked in a scheduling link or not. We don't let you currently configure it by number of meetings, but rather we have you configure it by total time spent in meetings. And so as we saw earlier, I can set my threshold at I only want to do 2 hours of meetings a day, and then I want my whole day blocked out. Or I only want to do 4 hours of meetings in a given week, and then I want my whole week blocked out. Or 5 hours or whatever it might be. Let me go down to 4. That'll probably do it. There we go. So those are kind of the controls we give you for encouraging no more than some max or meeting overload is the best way we would control that. If you've got more feedback on that or specific things you'd like to see that feature evolve into, do let us know, please. Okay. So I think I've covered all the agents, and now it's probably time to dig into tasks and some of the changes to expect there. Elizabeth, let me know if there's anything else as I'm digging into this. So you may recall a few minutes ago, I created a block of time called performance reviews. And if we go into tasks here, you're going to see that I have something called suggested tasks. And notice that a good chunk of them were performance review related, and that's not an accident. Oh, look, my lunch series came back. I'm going to get rid of that for the moment, just so we can be focused on the task feature. So what is happening here is that Reclaim is constantly looking at your calendar and looking at either available free time. So there doesn't have to be anything on the calendar, but also looking at things that are on the calendar. And if you're not in a meeting, if you're in a meeting, we're not going to suggest any tasks. But if you're not in a meeting and you have some block of time, and that block of time could be a habit, It could be focus. It could be some of those agents, or it could be very intentional time that you created by hand to block your calendar to do specific work. And we're going to reach out to all the different third parties you've connected with, as well as tasks you've given directly in Reclaim. And we're going to find the things that are most relevant to that work. And so this is the area that is most different. For those of you who've used our task feature before, the way we suggested tasks to work on next, that kind of decision paralysis type of scenario, was by literally scheduling it on the calendar. But what we found is that when we put a lot of blocks of time on the calendar, often people were finding that that time was not exactly the way they wanted to work. And so there was lots of fiddling with what's in up next or changing priorities around. And what we found is that there's a softer type of time blocking that can work really well. But it is different, and we acknowledge that. And we know that this could be disruptive for those of you who've become in love with our traditional task system. There's that lunch block again. Definitely there's something quirky going on. I'm going to keep deleting it. We'll see if it stays gone. Okay, so what's really happening here? Well, I wrote performance reviews, and we found stuff from, say, for example, in this case, Google Tasks. So let me call out a few things. One, our Google Tasks integration no longer requires a single task list. You can see here, I have organized my task lists in a bunch of different ways. Two, we have leaned into, wherever possible, MCP. If you're not familiar with MCP, it's the standard integration for chat systems. So that's what this is and this is that I was demoing earlier. And we've leaned into MCP for all of the integrations that we support. And we're finding the industry has pretty much universally accepted it. Sadly, Google Tasks does not, so we had to build something a little separate. But Todoist, Zoom, ClickUp, Asana, Jira, Linear, they all have MCP endpoints, and we're using those. And what we're doing is we're asking Reclaim's chat system when these moments of time come up, and we're giving it the context, and we're saying, okay, well, Patrick is now in a 2-hour block of time or 3-hour block of time for performance reviews. What's relevant to that? And we're taking into consideration that context as well as due dates and priorities. So why did it suggest this one as well? Well, because there's a second part of the task system that we know people appreciated from Reclaim 1.0, and that is the fact that you could tell when you are at risk of a particular task potentially missing its due date. The way we handled that in Reclaim 1.0 is we just scheduled everything. It was all on the calendar. It might go out. We've seen some of you have schedules that have tasks blocked out for weeks or even months out into the future. And we would look at every single task and see if that task is tentatively scheduled past its due date. And if it was, then we called it as at risk. We're doing the same thing now, but not putting it on your calendar, because we also got tons of feedback from our customers that was really overwhelming to see all that stuff on the calendar. And so in this case, you can see clearly things that are due tomorrow are getting surfaced up as at risk, including these two projects, which both need 10 hours of work. And clearly I don't have 10 hours of work before the due date. So they're getting automatically surfaced up. And we hope, but we want your feedback because we know we probably have to keep tuning it. But we hope that we're going to do a really good job of highlighting the most at risk and the most relevant things and suggesting those to you at all times. And you should be able to come back in here and consult with that and have confidence that you're getting that kind of information to solve two really important problems that our task system has always solved. What should I work on and what's at risk? Now, that said, I would strongly encourage you not to just block out time by hand like I did, but to actually lean heavily in to our focus features and our habits features and start thinking about how to block out your time in an intentional way. So if you're a software developer who gets a ton of coding done late at night, then go make a coding habit late at night and even lean into not just the title, but the descriptions. Say things like, this is the time when I go and I tackle a bunch of tickets from Jira and Linear, and that will truly influence what gets suggested. If you don't like time blocking on your calendar in that way, and maybe you weren't using our habits or our tasks before, but you do like the idea of an assistant suggesting things for you, you can also, as I've mentioned before, use custom hours. And so, for example, here, I've gone ahead and I've said, I've created a special time, 4 to 5 p.m. afternoons, that says this is my administrative time. And you can be absolutely sure that during this time, even if I have nothing on the calendar, Reclaim will know that it's a really good time to suggest tasks that are related to Slack and email, like these ones right here. Someone just asked a very relevant question. I love this one from Chris. Do you all have an option for coaching and calendar coaching? The quick answer is we're still working on that. I think we will have a coaching mode, and there's several different kinds of coaching that we can do. But I want to note, for example, there's a feature like pick a task and start the timer. And so let's see what happens here when I click this. You can lean into the chat and kind of get it to coach yourself. Like you can instruct it on how to be a coach. And I've done this myself, which is I just need to get a whole bunch of miscellaneous little things done. And so can you go ahead and pick the next thing and start the timer like it just did right now. And when I say I'm done, stop the timer, log the work, and pick the next thing. And when I tell it I need a break, it'll say, okay, cool, let's take a break for a second. So we do think, Chris, that the chat can start to evolve into a really great coach. There's different styles, there's Pomodoro, there's time blocking styles. You can read books like from Cal Newport. I think over time we want to encode those in to the personality of the coach. And would love to work with some of you who are interested in that idea. But I will say you can even today utilize our memories feature. Memories, by the way, are as simple as memories in Claude and ChatGPT. You just say, remember that I want, this is how I work, or remember this fact about me. And it will fold that into all of the decisions it makes, everything I showed you. Okay, I know that we got a clarifying question. Yes, somebody said, does this mean Reclaim is no longer auto-populating the planner with tasks? Do we have to manually say which upcoming tasks we want to work with? I integrate with Asana, and I want Reclaim to automatically put tasks on the calendar so that I know how much time I have. The answer is yes and no. We are not right now exploring the idea of scheduling every single task individually on the calendar, potentially days or weeks into the future. That doesn't, however, mean that we are not making it possible to do intentional time blocking. So I encourage you definitely to lean into, let me just reset this chat here. I'll show you what I mean by this. I definitely encourage you to try out more what I call coarse-grained as opposed to fine-grained scheduling. And that is, instead of every individual task called out, to have habits, recurring events, big blocks of time like a performance reviews that thematically group your day and your week together and lean into Reclaim's suggested tasks. But that doesn't mean that we can't also do more automated scheduling for you. And so this button right here, schedule my work, is something that is a close equivalent, but not the same as the way we blocked out time on the calendar before. So when you tell the agent to block out time for your tasks, what it's instructed to do is to look forward for the next few days and find thematically what are all the different tasks in Google, Jira, et cetera. Look at all the due dates, look at all the priorities, and see if it can do time blocking that we think is a little more realistic. And so you can see here that it went ahead and it said, okay, let's get you some time for those proposals that you said you need to do. But let's also recognize that you have several administrative bits of work. And then finally, let's do some planning later in the day. And so we know that for some of you, this might be disappointing if you've been using Reclaim 1.0, but we also think that this more aligns with how the majority of people think about their calendaring and their time allocations. So use a mixture of habits, focus, recurring events, scheduling hours, using the descriptions, but also when you need that one-off, I need extra time blocked out very intentionally, you can lean into Reclaim and ask it to do that for you. And it should do a pretty good job at it. Does that mean that you have to come back and click that button maybe every few days? It does. And we are exploring ways where we can automate that. I mentioned that you'll get a daily digest where we try to fix all the problems on your calendar. We are right now actively thinking that that's an obvious place where we can do this kind of workflow too. So not only suggest that you should reschedule this meeting, for example, because there's a conflict, but perhaps also say, hey, And I think you need to block out the rest of the day because you've got two proposals due and not enough time to get it done. And so we think that it should feel like a really helpful assistant and keep you in control, but not be overly precise on how it all gets blocked out. All right, Elizabeth, I know we are rapidly running out on time and there's still lots of unanswered questions. So should we just, I think I've covered all the main features. There's so much more. I can't get too deep into it, but I think I've covered broadly. I could just rapid fire go through these. Is that how we should go?
Yeah, I think we can group one question together quick for anyone that
Okay.
needs to drop about switching. We've had a couple questions
Mhm.
about if I switch over to 2.0 and I don't feel like it works with my workflow, can I switch back to 1.0? As well
Yeah.
as questions for people who are on team plans and switching over.
Yeah. Okay. So also being very straight with you, we are really only doing our development on the 2.0 system going forward. And that might be disappointing. I hope it's not. I hope we can meet you and meet all of your needs on 2.0. And so I do hope you will try it and work with us on the parts that aren't working with your workflow. But we also don't want to, just like leave you hanging in a lurch. So we will not have a self-service way to downgrade. But if it's just killing you and you really loved the old system, we are committed to keeping the old system around for quite some time. We have actually almost never retired any feature we've ever built. So hit us up in support and we can work with you to roll it back. But we frankly are not trying to make that a common thing. We are much more invested in figuring out how to please you and keep you on the new platform because that's where we're going to be doing all new future feature development. So all I'd ask is yes, but before we dial it back for you, if you could work with us and give us feedback, we would very much appreciate it. And we'd hope to keep you on 2.0.
We've
Regarding
got
team
question. Oh,
plans,
go for it.
this just a quick answer to that is this is an individual choice. So you can upgrade to 2.0. And if you have 10 other people on your subscription, they can stay on 1.0 or vice versa.
Perfect. We've got a couple questions about different integrations. Will Gemini be integrated with Reclaim 2.0 with the announcement of Apple Intelligence? Are there any plans to use that with Reclaim? Maybe we can touch on that.
Yeah, briefly, I can say TBD, frankly. Gemini does not, as far as I'm aware, have a desktop client. I mentioned it's rumored heavily to be coming out any day, and I assume it will support MCP, and we will natively work with it out of the box. So yes, when the moment is there. Apple Intelligence, same thing. Obviously saw the announcements earlier this week from Apple. Once we get our hands on it, I'm really curious, is this dedicated Siri AI app MCP compatible? That'll be interesting to learn. But we definitely want to support mobile workflows. Someone else asked that as well. That right-hand panel you're seeing over here, we think works perfectly in mobile. And actually, the app works really well in mobile today. It's not a native mobile app, and we do want to support native mobile apps so that we can pull in reminders from Apple or other, on-device information with your permission. So do look out for that. That is something we really want to get done. API access, our response historically, when people ask us for API access, is we have an undocumented REST API, and we are happy to give you, some hints on how to utilize it. And we have a lot of customers who've done some pretty fun things with it. There's open source GitHub projects today, but frankly, what we're finding is a lot more utility out of MCP tools itself. I think there's over 40 MCP tools that we've made available. And so, yes, there's classic API access, but also once you're on the 2.0 platform, you get access to a ton of MCP tools. And that might be an interesting way to automate, especially with tools like Claude Cowork. Okay. Someone asked about calendar blocks. I'll just briefly color that. No, they're not all blue. I just happen to have my calendar defaulted to blue. It is worth noting there is a auto color coding feature in Reclaim 1.0 that does not exist yet in Reclaim 2.0. We are going to add it soon. It will be an agent and it will be even more feature rich than the old feature. At the moment, we just use whatever color is on your calendar. So if I went into Google Calendar, you would see it's also blue here. If I change the default color to something else, it would change it here as well. Okay.
That kind
Just
of
work it.
answers the.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, there was that question about categorization and color coding. So that all kind of falls into that. That's something that's coming soon and will be much richer than it was in 1.0 as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of you may know our categorization has been, frankly, a little stale for several years. And LLMs are great at categorizing things. That will get much, much better. As you can see, we've leaned heavily into using LLMs in certain places, and we will be using them for a much richer classification system, which will then help with color coding, of course, too.
There's a great
Um,
question from Matt.
yeah.
How much do you
Okay.
expect a user will need to live in Reclaim to use it effectively? On 1.0, I set it up the way I like and then allowed the links and habits to work in the background while I simply use my Google Calendar, Outlook calendar like normal, and it worked
Yeah.
seamlessly behind the scenes. Will that behavior still work, or is it a direct interaction more necessary now?
No, I don't think it should be a direct interaction. I mean, certainly we hope over time we can win you over. We think we've built a really great calendar interface, but we're realistic. The native calendar interfaces are fantastic. And so I don't blame you for staying in there. Our answer to that is one, a lot of the agents that I showed you, like habits, buffers, and focus, are fully automated behind the scenes. And so if you were enjoying a lunch habit that adapted to your changing schedule, that will continue. None of that needs human in the loop intervention. The human in the loop workflows are in particular around meeting rescheduling, which I showed earlier. And so that case you might need to come back to Reclaim. But we make it easy to draw you in, sending you a daily digest of suggestions and also slacking you if you add our Slack integration. The other place, of course, is the suggested tasks. And so that is why we think this add-on, which is not live yet, I'm just briefly teasing it by bringing it open, but that is why we think that will be particularly useful and could complement if you're in Google Calendar or Outlook really well, because you could then still, imagine seeing this screen, but with your preferred calendar integration. So between mobile and the browser extension, that's the way we think you can see the relevant suggested tasks at any time. Hope that works for you. Let us know if you have concerns still.
Perfect.
Okay.
If I migrate to 2.0, will all my habits and current tasks migrate over, or will I have to recreate everything on the new platform?
Nope, we migrate. All of your habits should come right over. Your tasks, if they're, I should say, any tasks that you made directly in Reclaim will come over this way, like these ones. Your other tasks that were, say, in third-party systems like Google Tasks, Jira, et cetera, they will not migrate over and be seen here, but they will immediately be suggested as relevant tasks or at-risk tasks if the connection is still active. And I do want to call this out. Once you've migrated, go check your integrations again. Some integrations will just work, like Todoist. The authentication, if you had Todoist connected before the migration, it just works because it has all the necessary permissions to use the new MCP integration that we use. But some of the others you need to reconnect. So that's the only thing you'd have to do is reconnect. Jira I know is new. Asana has a different workflow. So keep that in mind.
And we have integration docs for all of these in the Reclaim 2.0 help doc collection, which I shared in the chat as well. And we'll follow up in the email. Let's see. We have a question about, are we moving into the calendar space? I'd love to be able to manage my inbox with similar features in your calendar.
I mean, we are definitely a full-featured calendar app at this point, including this unique preview mode. Where we go from here and whether we're going to do inbox management, I can't commit to any of that. I will tell you that one of the integrations we'd really like to do, and we've got the ability to do it because Dropbox has themselves some Gmail integrations and Outlook integrations. I would love it if in the near future, some of these suggested tasks can be things like starred email threads from Gmail or flagged email threads from Outlook. So that is our ambition. We are not there yet, but stay tuned.
Perfect. And then last but not least, do all Reclaim.ai plans qualify for 2.0, including the light version?
Yes, that is, they do. I should note briefly from a pricing standpoint, we tweaked our pricing slightly. We now price by total number of active agents, regardless of what kind. And some of you may know, for example, we had different pricing. You got one smart meeting and 3 habits and things like that on the free plan, or the paid plans had different tiers. We just simplified it for agents. But we also know that potentially could cause you issues. If you have 20 habits, that might put you over the starter plan limits that we have out of the box. Don't worry about that. Our policy is anything that migrates over is grandfathered in as a free agent. And so none of those agents migrated will count as paid agents. So the starter plan, for example, I believe supports up to 10 agents. You'll get 10 on top of whatever you've already had before the migration.
Amazing. I know there's some questions that we didn't get to. And I copied all of them. Any ones that we didn't answer, I will review and answer in the follow-up email. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for the great questions today. More questions than we had answers for. So super excited to be rolling this out. Thank you, Patrick, for your time. There will be a recording sent out as well. So if this was a lot to take in, there will be a recording that you can watch on demand. If you do want to switch over, if you are on the 1.0 platform, reach out to support@Reclaim.ai or via the chat in the app. Thank you so much, everyone. Super excited for this next generation of Reclaim. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and a great weekend ahead. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.